Hello there, and welcome to today's Legacy of Love and Laughter. And we're going to start out with song. Ready? Okay. Don't know much about history. Don't know much biology. Don't know much about a science book. Don't know much about the French I took. But I do know that I love you. And I know that if you love me too, what a wonderful world it would be.
Dream on.
Yeah, she's right. We kind of talked about it being pipe dreams because that is a lot of hockey puck we're singing there. And it is because of that that we're in a lot of the messes we are. Hence, all that silly romantic stuff that just wasn't true has affected where we are today. Think about this. You know what? If you don't learn from history,
It'll repeat itself.
yeah, you're forced to repeat it. And if you don't know much about biology, well, if you did know a lot about biology, there wouldn't be all this ruckus about all the things that we are arguing about and dividing us about biology. Then there's science. And if we weren't thinking about, if we didn't know anything about science, we'd still be in way worse shape with COVID than we are. So, and the French we took, well, it's funny. Don't we make fun of people from, that speak other languages and they've got thick accents and we laugh at them? Guess what? They know more languages than I do. And for most of us, for that fact, So today we want to talk about history and how much history we have been through and we experienced. And I knew we couldn't remember it all, so I printed out some notes about history.
First, I gotta tell you, I'm not good on history. I mean, I know from my own perspective I know it, but it's not one of my strong points. So I'm just letting you know in advance, she knows more about history than I do. I just know I was there.
I know more Google history, and I got a pretty good memory. But and some of the stuff we were too young to remember. But we were a part of the shaping of the history today. So no, I'm not an expert at history myself, but we're gonna take a look at some of the things that happened in our lifetimes. Now we're looking from the early 40s, and we're looking until the 90s, up till the 90s, because at that point, my dear children, your dear children, you have your memories of history, and you got to pick it up from there and share that, unless it's something we stick in later on down the road. So this is probably, the song was about as much actual laughter as you're going to get, because a lot of the history wasn't exactly a barrel of monkeys. So we're going to start off with something that happened in 1945 on August 2nd, when the U.S. dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima, Japan. And sadly, there were over 140,000 people that died. And did you have any memory of that?
Of the 1940 what?
You would have been 3 or 4. No, but we talked about it over the years when we would see pictures about it, about that dreaded
big mushroom
cloud.
It was horrifying.
Yeah.
But still, when you're that much younger, you really don't hold on to it that much. I think I know more about it now than I did at the time. It wasn't affecting me in my life, so I just went on.
I just remember it scared me, and it scared me when you thought about the radiation that would go off of that, because as many people that died from the bombing, that many people more died from radiation poisoning and stuff over the years. So and I know so somebody out there is saying, well, remember Pearl Harbor, and that happened when she was just a baby baby. We're talking months old.
Lasted too long. Long
It
time.
lasted too long.
I
Any
can
war.
remember crawling under our desks for air raid alerts and all
Yeah.
that stuff. It's kind of a scary thing, even as a child. You know, at first it seems like a game, but you very soon realize what could happen, and it could happen to your parents or your sisters and brothers or your pets. You know, all of a sudden you're going, we're not going to be here forever, and this could happen real quick. It was
Yeah.
over in a minute.
Yeah, and of course, a part of it was kind of insane because what we did was called duck and cover, which means you went under your desk and you put your hands behind your neck and you pulled down like that, which was supposed to protect you. I would invite you to go back and look at a picture of an atom bomb going off and think of a kid under their desk going like this. I don't know, I guess if the bomb was far enough away, you know.
Yeah, from the fallout.
Yeah, then there's the fallout.
Building collapsing and stuff.
Yeah, and then what? In 2001, I remember taping up duct tape on all the cracks around my windows after 9/11 for fear that any radiation might get in if they pull something else. So, would you think we'd learn by this time? Now, there were also bomb shelters in our day where you would build an impervious underground place to
Sort
live.
of like the tornado thing, you know, where you built a safe place if you heard a tornado was coming. This was the same thing with the alarms and everything. And people got really serious. They would stock up supplies that would last them for years. Like you're going to stay under the ground, and what are you going to do? I mean, if you don't get out, you start thinking about that. It's very scary.
It is scary, but you wonder. So, what do you think? Would you rather have a bomb shelter and not know what you're going to come out to, or just
My choice.
go when
I
it
don't,
happens?
I don't want to be the last one to go.
Nor would I want to come out afterwards and see the horror that surely would be there. Now, there is a great movie, if you want to turn a little laughter into this, and it's called Blast from the Past. And it's about a family who goes into a bomb shelter because they think there's an imminent warning, but nothing happened. And they
They
come
don't
out.
know it.
Yeah, they don't know
They
it.
think it happened, but they don't know it because they're under the ground.
And they come out like 25 years later. And, the son goes to venture out to see what's happening out there. Really, really good movie. So get a laugh out of history. And also think of some of the, what would you call that? What a waste of time, energy, and money to build a bomb shelter that,
Spend your whole life being afraid of what
Yeah.
could happen. And it didn't happen, but you thought it did. That's not good.
no. Or you feared that it would, which would keep you from sleeping, you know. So then on August 9th, I think that's still 1945, Japan agreed to unconditional surrender. That's what I was going to say. What about Pearl Harbor? Because that was, again, they attacked us. But it doesn't matter who attacks who. War, it doesn't work no matter how you look at it. But remember the other day we were talking about toys? And we talked about those little tin cars and everything made out of Band-Aid boxes. I'm thinking that's a part of the economic recovery where we sent them stuff and they sold it back to us in a different form. That's kind of the way things work when countries are supposed to help each other. But usually they're not supposed to blow them up before they go back and help them. You know? Okay, and did you know that until 1947, on July 18th, there was no act for presidential succession until 1947. That's not that long ago. I was 2, she was 5, but if the president died, there was no plan. It would be chaos. So, therefore, in 1947, there came a plan of succession of if this one's gone, then that one. If that one's gone, then that one. If that was, it's like 12 deep. If it was any bigger than that, I don't know what would happen. Maybe they have something else. Okay, so I just highlighted some other things because a lot of it was even new to me. I was a baby. So was she, more or less. Um, okay, we went through so many wars. We went through, we were born right after World War One and into World War Two, and Valerie was born when it started, and I was born right after it ended. I missed baby boomer like 6 months or something. But then there was the Korean War, and that was from 1950 to 1953. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, but you can access old TV, MASH was a sitcom about the Korean War and the soldiers in it. Now, not that war is ever funny, but they did look at some very touching topics. So we came through that one. And then, of course, there was the Vietnam War. Now, that, I think, impacted us as people most. We were young adults at the time. What are the thoughts you have, some of the things about the Vietnam War coming into existence? And
I was more afraid of the draft. That my friends and my future husband, whatever at the time, could get drafted. Usually once you had a family, they didn't, but it was still a very scary time, and it was horrible. I mean, that's the part that affected me the most because of my age, I guess. But it was not good, and you wondered, how did it happen, and how could you get out of it, and how did you get in it in the first place? No idea.
right, yeah, and politically, I've got to be real honest, I was not very astute. I did not vote until I was 30 years old. That's kind of embarrassing, but it is what it is. Now, my ex-husband was at the Berlin Wall. So Nick and Frank and Sean and Mimi, your father was stationed at the Berlin Wall. He wasn't, didn't see action, as it were, but he was there. And that's another part of things that we have to help take care of each other. People are always saying, why do you go to another country? Why do you go to these other countries to help them and get involved in their wars? Well, because we're all interdependent. So we need to help each other. And don't you know, we'd want someone to come help us if we needed it. Remember 9/11. If you want to get a taste of what it was like during the Vietnam War via the movies, I would invite you to watch the movie Hair. You saw that movie?
Yeah.
Actually.
I had a hard time understanding it. I knew what it was about, so I got it, but
It was about people that were trying to get away from the draft. But do you remember when we went to see the play at the Bushnell? We went to see the play at the Bushnell. Sammy was with us, and I did not tell her what was going to happen. I knew it was going to happen, but I didn't tell her. And all of a sudden, for a flash of time, everybody on the stage is naked. And it was like, what? I thought Sammy was going to fall out of her chair. But it was about the hippies and the people who wanted peace, and all the peace songs and all the protest songs. And if you want to have something stir in your soul about what it was like for everything people were going through at that time, I would recommend it's a DVD called The Power of Music, and it's about Pete Seeger. And he sang a lot of protest songs with Peter, Paul, and Mary. And matter of fact, I posted one today, and I'm not going to sing it. You got all the singing you're going to get. Do you remember the song, Where Have All the Flowers Gone?
oh yeah.
And where'd all the
I'm not
flowers
singing
go?
it either.
No, where'd all the flowers go? Do you remember the lyrics?
They've gone to all the flowers go.
The
I don't
young
know.
girls picked them, everyone. The young girls picked them to give to the soldiers, to put them on the graves of the soldiers
A long
who died.
time.
A
I'm
long time.
unprepared.
No, I know. Who's ever prepared for history, though, really? You know, it kind of happens. There were, about the protests, you talked about that earlier. And one of the things that would bother me during the Vietnam War is that they would have these reports all the time. You would see all of the body bags coming off of planes bringing home dead soldiers. And, you know, we are so fortunate. As much as we've got bad stuff going on right now, we really should learn from our history how to heal it. Because at least that's one thing we're not looking at every night is on the news, the body bags that are coming back from the war. You know, so, and
Unless you have another COVID.
unless you have another COVID. Ain't that the truth? You know, war comes in many ways. And the worst part, you know what, even with regular war, I guess one of the bad parts is when you deny it, when you say, oh, it's not going to be a problem. Because if we don't address our problems, they get bigger. You may hear a little interesting sound in the background, which happens to be thunder.
We've been
We're-
praying for rain for weeks.
We have
This is
been.
a blessing.
You know, we're in a drought, not as horrible as some people are, but man, when the grass turns brown and crunchy, not a good thing. Okay, another tasty tidbit. In 1951, the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution was ratified, and do you know what that did?
I don't know.
It limited presidents to 2 terms.
Good plan.
Good plan. Did you know that there was a president that served 3 terms?
Yeah, there was. Was it Roosevelt?
You're right. Ta-ta!
I do know a little history.
She said she didn't know history. So, alrighty. So we're going to, and in 1951, President Truman spoke in the first coast-to-coast live television broadcast. How do you like that? So we're going to move ahead to 1953, and we want to talk about the inauguration of a particular president that Valerie was an active participant.
Another little bit of history that I was part of.
Experience.
That's right. We went, one day we went to school and they took everybody and put them on a school bus. And we all got a little flag. And we lived at Lake Besic at the time in Middlefield. And we drove to where Gaida's Dairy Bar was, where they sold
And
ice cream.
still
and
is.
stuff. And they unloaded us off the bus and put us along the edge of the highway with our little flags in groups, you know. And here comes I believe it was before he was elected, Eisenhower. Oh, the flags are going and everybody's having this great and wonderful time. You didn't hardly get to see him. I think the car was black, might have been yellow. I really don't know. But we were all very excited about it. Load us back on the bus, take us back to school, and that was it. We got to see future President Eisenhower.
I think that's pretty exciting. I got to see JFK when he was campaigning in Hartford. My mom let my friend, my mom didn't let Marie skip school. She let me skip school, and Marie came along, and we took a bus and went to Hartford and saw John F. Kennedy.
He was running then, right?
He was running, and I was not old enough to vote.
That was my first president I voted for. I couldn't wait. I hated watching politics on TV until Kennedy started. He touched me. It was so good to listen to him. I understood what he was saying. I liked his message. I don't care what anybody else thought about him. I thought he was a pretty great guy. And I think he spoke to younger people. And I was in that group, and I really, really appreciated that.
You know what? I'm wondering how old he'd be now, because we got so many people in government that are like that age. You know that?
Right.
So he was young and wonderful, and for us he was Catholic. I mean, how can you go wrong? He was Catholic, for God's sake.
Not bad looking either.
Now that's another point he had. You know, young father.
And his wife was beautiful.
Beautiful, stylish, classy.
Great kids, nice little animals in
Yeah.
the White House. It was cool.
Yeah, it was. It was a wonderful
It made
thing.
it feel touchable, you know, like the real people.
Yeah, yeah. And then, moving on, this is pre-Kennedy. We just kind of went ahead a little bit because nobody ever told you this was going to be chronological, actually. Hang on. Oh, okay. So in 1954, Joseph McCarthy, senator, accused Army officials and members of the media and other public figures of being communists. That was called McCarthyism, and it was very scary. And a lot of good actors were considered communists, and they were what was called blackballed. They were not allowed to be in any movies or anything. Their career was taken away because someone said they were communists.
This is Zero Mostel, and there was Susan's uncle.
Ooh,
You didn't know that, huh?
no, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
he was one of the ones, and a lot of his people. He was a comedian also.
Oh, well, and also the one I like, it wasn't James Cagney, Peter Lorre. Peter Lorre was, and Lucille Ball. A lot of the actors were put out. And in case you didn't know what blackball means, did you know what blackball came from?
Yeah.
I got a head full of trivia.
So she's using it up right now.
Yes, show off. They would, if a pirate was going to be, they would be given a piece of paper and they'd open it up and there'd be a black circle on it. If they were blackballed, that means you're out of here. So be careful. Be careful who you accept pieces of paper from. Okay, I'll bet you might have thought it was something else there, those of you with your mind in the gutter. Get it out. Okay, and then in 1962, 1961, the United States severed relations with Cuba, diplomatic relations with Cuba, and it knocked me on my butt. I was so scared that we were going to be at war with Cuba. Now see, back at that time, she was already married. You were already married.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I didn't spend much time thinking about it. If it didn't touch me directly, if it wasn't like in my backyard or in my face, I just went on from day to day. I had this little life of mine, and that's where I was.
I, on the other hand, sat in my chair and cried. And my dad said to me, Grandpa Henry, why are you crying? And I said, oh my God, we stopped diplomatic relations with Cuba. We're going to go to war. I'm so afraid. And Grandpa Henry said to me, look, honey, he said, I've been around for a while. And he wasn't around at that time as long as we are. And he said, so many things we've been through, World War I, World War II, everything's going to come out in the end. You just enjoy every day, and everything's going to come out in the end. Our dad was a very wise guy.
Good attitude.
He wasn't a wise guy. He was a wise guy. He was. Well, then that actually spread to the Cuban Missile Crisis. And when the Cuban Missile Crisis came up, we really were fearful we would be attacked by Cuba. My uncle was so fearful, he wanted to take his whole family and move to New Hampshire because he thought that Connecticut was too close to Washington, that we might be involved in that. We've been through some scary parts of history, and when you are going through our current scary parts of history, remember one thing. If you don't learn from your history,
It's going to repeat itself.
and we've been through a lot before, we're here to learn.
It's hard when there are so many people who have decided they don't believe things that happened when you were close enough to it. When it comes to the Holocaust, that was a very hard thing, very hard. And I mean, in my lifetime, I was too young to really know what was going on. But as you study and you get older and stuff, and you meet people who were there, you meet people who had family that were there and that were killed, and how horrible. Now you've got people tramping around here in 2022, and they're going, there was no such thing as a Holocaust. That was a hoax. That never happened. That is awful for all those people that died and fought and just to have a living. They weren't looking for anything, not a big mansion or not a big fancy anything. They died for somebody else who wanted to be a dictator. I just, that's a horrible thing, and that now people are denying it. I think that is a bad mistake. Bad.
And it was also a form of racism because they were looking down at the Jews and just the whole thing was really, really bad. We've really, really got to learn this, guys. And I think that's what's particularly frustrating for us, is that we know better. We were there. Now, you understand that she was born in 42, I was born in 45, and the war ended in 45, and the murders that were going on, I think they were going on from the late 30s.
Oh, long time.
And yeah, and the thing is, we knew people who lost people. We knew people that had tattoos on their arms that were their marks of being in captivity. So, you know, and then during World War II, we took Japanese people and put them in internment camps here because we didn't trust them. Guys, we got to learn to love and trust each other. Martin Luther King was so right when he said, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can drive out hate. Oh, let's go past that. 1962, Lieutenant Colonel John Glenn becomes the first astronaut to orbit the Earth on February 20th.
Imagine that. We couldn't imagine that. We
No.
never thought he'd make it. Yeah, we hoped and we all watched to see what was going to happen.
Yeah.
But boy, that was a dream.
Yeah.
So when it happened, talk about excitement.
You know, and that's like when John Kennedy, President Kennedy, said, he announced, we are going to go to the moon. And he said, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Sometimes we don't want to do things because they're too hard, but we should do them because they are worth doing. And there's people that are denying that too. Honest to goodness, we got to get to truth, my friends. Okay, 1963. Oh, wait, I missed something. Back in 1961, a mixed race group of volunteers sponsored by the Committee on Racial Equality, the so-called Freedom Riders, travel on buses through the South in order to protest racially segregated interstate bus facilities. I recommend that you watch the PBS special from back when called the Freedom Riders. We're not, because we're from the North, we did not have a big experience of racism as they did in the South. When did you first become aware of racism?
God, I was an adult. I never went to school with any black kids. Not elementary school, not junior high school, not even senior high school. All the people that were in my classes were white kids. I went to trade school, and I know there were a few there. I remember seeing them. I didn't have any encounters with them. Not because I didn't want to. I had no reason. So I couldn't understand what was the big deal. They're people. They just happen to be black. It just didn't occur to me. And so when I met some, and they were just exactly the same as the rest of us, except they were black, I didn't get what the big fuss was about.
Yeah. We were not raised, well, here, I'm going to be straight up with you here. We were not raised on a diet of racism, although my grandfather on my mother's side, my mother's father, who really was a nice man, he would use the N-word. And if they were walking down the street and there was a person of color coming toward them, they would cross the street. And can you blame my grandfather, or can you blame the history that we had not yet learned from, that was not right? I, on the other hand, had and this is the 3 years between us, I had a black schoolmate in kindergarten. His name was Butchie Peanut. And that leads you to wonder, how did you get the name Butchie Peanut? But I'm thinking a peanut farm had something to do with it before his family migrated north.
We did see them whenever we go to Florida.
We did.
Little tiny huts way out in a field someplace with a whole bunch of, as my mother would put it, pickaninnies running around the yard. Now, that's not a very nice phrase, but we didn't know it at the time. We thought little black kids were called pickaninny.
I didn't think Mom thought it was bad either, because she said, "Oh, that's
No.
the cutest little pickaninny
She
I ever
loved him.
saw." Yeah, she did. So we didn't get to hate race, and we thought it was pretty strange when we would go visit our family in Florida, and there were white drinking fountains and black drinking
Yeah.
fountains and white bathrooms and black bathrooms, and
And
you
which
go,
one was special? The white one, the white one, or the black one?
Yeah.
You could tell pretty quick once you went down south because the black ones were never taken care of like the white ones were.
Yeah.
But we didn't know the difference. We didn't have that up north.
yeah.
Not at that time.
And a lot of people think, all that racial stuff, that ended, decades ago, back in the 60s when, they got the right to vote and all this other stuff. That was really not that long ago. It was our lifetime. And if we were on the side of being a person of color and had been abused and had a history that went back into slavery, you don't forget that soon. Believe me when I tell you, you don't forget that soon.
You got to be good to everybody. They'll be good back to you. You can't make judgments about things or about people without having some reason. You've got to think about before you say things and before. I mean, when there was on the news the other day, it was a picture of a boy, 11 years old. They said he was riding his bicycle down the street, and he was in Deep River, which is up
Right here.
up north here near us. And this white man and another person came up and asked him where he was from. And he said he was from Connecticut, and he gave him a hard time, and he said to him, "Why don't you just go home and get out of here?" And pushed him over, him and his bicycle, pushed him on the ground. This is like a 40-something-year-old guy pushing an 11-year-old child. And
Who
just
was
because he's
not
black.
being mouthy.
No,
He said,
he was-
"Where do you live? Do you live here?" And the kid's like, and he just pushed him
It
over.
was a horrible thing. And to see it on television was very, very frustrating.
We're going to end for today because we went past our half hour, but we're going to end with the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Now, this was actually, we lost two great people in a very short period of time. The first one was Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. He had given a speech where he delivered, it was called "I Have a Dream." And if you ever want to have your soul stir, read Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech. And he, of course, was assassinated, and President Kennedy was assassinated. Martin Luther King was assassinated a couple of years later. JFK, you ask anybody over the age of 50 maybe, where were you when you heard that Kennedy was assassinated? Where were you?
I was pregnant, and I was in Kensington. We were getting ready to go into a pharmacy, and they had loudspeakers outside on the, it was like a little pavilion place. They had loudspeakers outside the store, and they made the announcement. And at first you're going, this must be some kind of, like, come on, or something. It can't be true. But they repeated it 2 or 3 times, and then you saw people actually starting to run. I don't know where they were going to go, and I was pregnant. I wasn't running anywhere. But I was with my mother and Helen Lissy, of all people, and it was horrifying. I mean, I cried. I was right there, and
He
I
was
cried.
just shot at that time. The president has been shot. And
You don't believe it. It seems like it can't happen.
right. And but I mean, he was shot, and I was walking downstairs to. It was called a rec room, and that was a basement where my mom had painted the rock walls pink. My dad put up a little sheetrock, and my mom had a couple recliners and stuff, and that's where you would go to hang out. We had a TV down there, and I was walking down the stairs. I can even tell you what I was wearing. I had what do they call it? A straight skirt. It was tweedy, like little black and brown stuff, and some kind of sweater on. I remember the skirt, not the top. And it was the day before Thanksgiving, and we were getting ready for Thanksgiving. And I was walking down the stairs to go to the rec room. My mom was down there. And I wanted to watch Oh, Susanna. I loved that show. She was a cruise director, and I loved the thought of cruising back then. And so it went down the stairs, and I stopped halfway when they interrupted. We say, "We interrupt this program for..." And I was like, "Oh, God, you're interrupting. Oh, Susanna, how dare you?" And then they gave the news. And I immediately went up and I told my mom I was going to church. And I just went and sat in the church and prayed and prayed and prayed that he wouldn't die. He was long dead. You get shot in the head, chances are. And you know what? I'm just thinking, the way he was shot, back in those days, the cars were open.
Convertible.
It was a convertible, and they'd stand up and wave, And now, if a president goes by, they're all, in a car and bulletproof, and you barely even see them because the glass is tinted. And if he was shot with an AR-14 or whatever those assault weapons are, would have been a whole lot worse because a whole lot more people would have died. Please, let's work together, gun owners and people that don't think you need or should have guns, to find responsible gun ownership. So what do you think? Do you have anything else to add about our history experience so far?
There's just so much. You can't squeeze it all in. I mean, look at the things that have just happened in the past few years, probably starting with the two towers and going on from there. There's been riots, there's been people that don't believe what the past happened, and they're making up their own things. We're having a president that's an issue, was an issue, I think he still is an issue. But so many things are going on. We could keep this on for a long time in our lifetime.
And we will.
And we only lived less than 80 years. So just think about that. In that amount of time, all the things we just told you about and more. What
More. There's more to come.
We want to tell good things one time.
We are. I warned you this would not be
The end of the world.
Yeah.
Even if you did sing.
Well, we had fun, basically, because we hope we shared some things with you that gave you a deeper look at what it was like when we went through. Oh, I didn't tell you about my friend Joanne, who was my first black friend. Maybe we'll start there next time. But for now, we're going to go on our merry way back to our day. And
our beautiful rainy day.
Our beautiful rainy day. We've been praying for it. It's a day to make soup, All right, my friends, our family members, our precious children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, nieces, and nephews.
Au revoir.
Au revoir. Sayonara. Happy.
Nobody came knocking on the door.